Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. 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 Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, 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 Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, 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 Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho 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 Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu 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 Myoho Renge Kyo. Horenge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge 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 Kyo. Kyo Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, 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 Namu Myoho Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, 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 Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, 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 Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Kyo Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, 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 Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu 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 Myoho Renge Kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo Namo 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 Renge Kyo Namo Myoho 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 Myoho Renge Kyo Namo 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 Myoho Renge Kyo Renge Kyo Namo Myoho 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 Renge Kyo Kyo Namo Myoho Renge 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 Kyo Kyo Namo Myoho Renge 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 Kyo Myoho Renge Kyo Namo 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 Myoho Renge Kyo Horenge Kyo Namo Myoho Renge 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 Kyo Kyo Namo Myoho Renge 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 Kyo Myoho Renge Kyo Namo 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 Namo Myoho Renge Kyo 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 Myoho Renge Kyo Namo 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 Myoho Namo Myoho Renge Kyo 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 Myoho Renge Kyo Namo 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 Myoho Horenge Kyo Namo Myoho Renge 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 kyo, 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 namo myoho renge kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo Namo 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 Myoho Renge Kyo Myoho Renge Kyo Namo 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 Myoho Renge Kyo Myoho Renge Kyo Myoho Renge Kyo Myoho Renge Kyo Ho Ben Bondai Ni Ni Jesus Anju Samai Anjoni Kigo Shari Hachi Chofu. Right off the bat. I'm sorry. Let's start again. Myoho Renge Kyo Ho Ben Bondai Ni Ni Jesus Anju Samai Anjoni Kigo Shari Hachi Chobu Chie Jin Jin Morio Nange Nanyo Isai Shoman Yakachi Butsu Shofu no Chi Sho Ishaga Butsu Sho Singon Yakasenman Nakamushu Sho Butsu Tengyo Sho Butsu Murio Doho Yum Yo Sho Jim Yo Sho Fuman Joju Jin Jin Mizo Uho Shari Hatsugo Jujo Butsu Irai Shuju Inen Shuju Hiyu Koen Gongyo Mushu Ho Ben Nindo Shujo Rori Jo Jakajo Ishaga Nyorai Ho Ben Chiken Haramitsukai Igu Sokashai Nyorai Chiken Kodai Jinyon Isen Joge Da Samai Jinya Musai Joju Isai Mizo Uho Shari Hatsu Nyorai no Shuju Fum Betsugo Sesho Ho Ganchi Nunai Neka Shushin Shari Hatsugo my goodness. Shuyo Gonchi Murya Muhen Mizo Uho Bush Joju Shi Shada Hatafu Chubu Setcho Shaga Busho Joju Dai Ichikeun Zio Butsunai no Kujin Shoho Jiso Choi Shoho Nyoze So Nyoze Sho Nyoze Tai Nyoze Riki Nyoze San Nyoze In Nyoze En Nyoze Kan Nyoze Ho Nyoze Honma Gugyodo Nyoze So Nyoze Sho Nyoze Tai Nyoze Riki Nyoze San Nyoze In Nyoze En Nyoze Kan Nyoze Ho Nyoze Honma Gugyodo Shoi Shoho Nyoze So Nyoze Sho Nyoze Tai Nyoze Riki Nyoze En Nyoze Kan Nyoze Ho Nyoze Honma Gugyodo Myoho Renge Kyo Nora 大中ヨハン大十六日仏語消防殺牛異最大宗祖先南地尿道と神芸如来上大士号武号大衆尿道と神芸武号小大衆尿道と神芸如来上大士号聖寺菩薩大衆弥勒威衆合唱不可不知願世尊如意願世士が道道真珠仏号尿税三百一武願如意願世士が道道真珠仏号一生菩薩三丈夫子二号士願尿道大乗如来秘滅真珠士力再世間天人牛は修羅海根釈迦牟尼仏執着地宮さあ、お上々徳はのくたら三脈三宝大年千難地が実成仏以来無量無辺約千万のくなゆくたあそぎごじ約千万のくなゆたあそぎ三千大千世界顔と僕約千万のくなゆたあそぎ国内芸一人女性東京人生未人祖先難地大い運が世相世界か特殊有意境界地語中風弥勒菩薩と世相世界無量無辺非三十小智百非心力小牛一切小門百智仏一無道智父の智慧智語言通あゆおちじおぜちじゅ百小福大世尊有ぜ小世界無量無辺二次仏語大菩薩修祖先難地根頭風行宣行の道ぜ小世界百者人に一人一人一個が成仏以来部下おし百千万のくなゆうたあそぎこち十世来が成祭しシャバ世界世法教義百行小百千万のくなゆうた中上祖先難地大勢中元が殺年度部とウブ願語入お涅槃行世界方便分別小先難地脈修正仏言願語神道小根理論水晶王道小長地絶妙地不動電気大小薬部言願導入涅槃入一中中方便説微妙法能量修正法願義神祖先難地有消防特は空中祭千年殺が小集計特はのくたら三脈三宝大年が実成仏以来空安薬師他人方便教系修正論入仏道地如来故如来正円教伝会移動だ修正若説行心若絶対心若実行心若実体心若実行時若実体時象徴願絶外実不幸知見三界思想無生寺脈体脈塾薬無罪制御末道者非実非行非尿非不尿三界権尿三剣の三界如ししち如来妙剣無釈妙一生中上無修修上修中欲修中行別個欲老少祖先が二若二年比喩願寺中中世法調査仏地未相参拝尿世が成仏以来人大軍安順妙無量阿蘇義工上十分別小先難地上上寿命貫入未尽部敗上修年間非実滅道二弁長願途中滅道如来世方便教系修上小威者が脈部空中王世博多新人風修戦願sorry頓着語欲入王奥と毛見毛中若見如来上財富別弁義教師に永遠大部の小難造思想苦行師心方便説美空投資小部修正難か地空小威者が小約等人か無料約三万の子若風見バタ若風見茶意識自己がさせ願と小美空如来檀家刀剣知修東上門如世語人小難造思想心霊連邦活語応仏弁数戦願 実滅にば、にが滅度、優先難地、小物如来、北海尿税、移動中上、海実不幸、貧尿老一へ。妙蓮法薬膳治種病後人多少子釈百十二十内地薬種異有自然non治療国少子王後御他毒薬薬発問難年年入自世自後部現来期系若夫死者要見後部海大官議廃棄門心善難の気が東具自後僕だけ薬現現空用境地中妙物件地と苦の尿性栄小凶暴愚行薬草石後耳解説具足投資和合用しろ僕にさせがん地大老薬石後耳僕食上空年部部中元が行承知中不死信者見地老薬式後愚行作弁牧師病人女優不来湯水薬関係門地具弱持病年用後薬に不幸牧小医者が同系人入出版進行おしこ式後薬にい不明死死神に毒症中人海天道水見学き愚者苦慮尿税公薬に不幸僕学根当絶方便老牧師薬即座世願指示意思成功老薬根如在し尿化中僕も通負債させ教義武士他国現地言語尿部意思政治昇進門部廃昇進大有の自民がどの県空語患者者が温存多国自由航路無部自権上映非感染追証後内地地薬式後耳作種牧師毒病回遊人弁来期現地見地当然難地有意用がハウニの摂取老意公も財布放茶生産物言が薬尿税上物依頼無用無変薬剤異中上皇異法弁力言と滅動薬無運の尿法説が公も会社二次生産薬中戦時に設計が自学自がどこぶらい小教小公衆無料白線万の草や葬儀女性公共機両入応物道に来無料行為道修上行法弁言内犯に実不滅道上重視説法が上重応し一朝鎮守力道天道修道水願に不見中見が滅道現外連邦に小結合心中上期人牧直々犬何信要件物富士略人名字が優秀速出動中前が自合中上欧弁理工芸入滅不滅用国中上苦行信号者が部を非注意説無情報尿と不満地他にが滅老が現状中上持つ在を空海後不意現心ご神連邦内出備説法人数力尿税大和葬儀工場在労流前休養長中上中上健康人大化小長自が指導湾の天人上10万の日照道各中法住だけが修上長有楽商天学天空動作主義学ウマンなら計三八九大修が浄土不義二修憲章人入不職の税收在修上医薬後一年間葬儀後不満ざま妙長宇宙空毒入は七直さ総会見外心在心に説法枠自意思修宮内見部社一説物難地が地力尿税英語庁無料寿命無修国修合所得尿とうち茶も当地長儀と乱用用人以前方便に自由思考つつ愛にが事務の成功も外役為生部食現茶異本部伝道実在にが滅異条件学校に小教師心大王悪道中が常時重要行道不行道重要超過道一世中中法毎四三千年にが領中上特入無常道 Sakaja jibu shiname. Myoho renge kyo nam. Myoho renge kyo nam. Myoho renge kyo. Namo myoho renge kyo. Namo myoho renge kyo. Namo myoho renge kyo. Myoho renge kyo nam. Myoho renge kyo nam. Myoho renge kyo. Myoho renge kyo nam. Myoho renge kyo nam. Myoho renge kyo. Nam myoho renge kyo. Nam myoho renge kyo. Nam myoho renge kyo. Namu 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 Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you very much. Well, that was amazing. I tried something a little different. Hopefully you picked up on it. I'm trying to continue the rhythm of the chanting and the actual characters or words of the chanting while I'm breathing in, so that I can try to create a smooth an experience of recitation as I can. Not always succeeding, obviously. Still figuring out whether I should breathe in one sentence or two, that kind of thing. Let me know in the comments if that felt a little smoother for you, even though, I am human, so breath is breath, right? Talk about being conscious of breath. And then my eternally dry throat. The foibles of being a mouth breather. Anyway, the mandala was really dancing around for me today, I can tell you that. But I mean, that's also an interesting facet of our practice, is that if you really want to stop your monkey mind and focus on your Buddha mind while you're facing mandala, try breathing correctly, making sure that each sentence ends at a period, so you're not ending your chant mid-sentence. Or we fall into habits where our rhythms, not just our breathing, but we don't train our breathing, so our rhythm of recitation picks up a habit of stopping between a couple of characters, which is mid-sentence. So I remember vaguely, but many years ago, first trying to, once I got the recitation and I got the pronunciation, I noticed by that time, because it takes a little while, right, that I had developed these habits of my breath ending in the middle of sentences instead of at the end of a sentence. And I became hyper aware of oh yeah, there's dots everywhere. These are sentences. And I started to adjust. And that kind of effort, because it's on your Gohonzon, your mind of Buddha, your opening door, really, really narrows and nails your focus where it ought to be, instead of thinking about the barking dog down the street. So challenge yourself that way to do things as correctly as you know them to be, because as I just said, sometimes you don't notice the correct things until you kind of stumble into them. But anyway, anything that challenges you to experience the joy of Buddha mind, that's the practice. All right, so we're leaving the Satipatthana, which I'll just a couple of closing words on that, is still debated amongst some scholars as to whether it's a late stage Hinayana or a beginning stage Mahayana. I think it's a transitional sutra. We can say that with confidence, because it does shift focus from the Arahant to the Bodhisattva, but doesn't do a really great job of dissecting them. Although we didn't read the whole thing, so there may be more in there. Certainly, though, we identify the period of scribing out this oral tradition about 100 years BCE in the Gandhara region of India, which is now several different countries, of the Prajna Paramita Suttas, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, of which there are several, basically the same teaching, but separate. It's a long teaching. So some chunks were taken to be like the Diamond Sutra, or even smaller chunks like the Heart Sutra. The Prajna Paramita in 32 verses and 20 some verses and 8,000 lines, and the full Prajna Paramita. There are all sorts of versions, but they're all the same teaching, albeit condensed. As some things are, it's easier to memorize and orally transmit some chunks that seem to be essential of the teachings. And so this is the way they were scribed down. And they certainly are very much concerned with the Bodhisattva coursing in the perfection of wisdom, right? Now, the book that I thought we'd touch on next is an interesting book that you might want to pick up for yourself. It's a book about the MulaMadhyamakaKarika, or Nagarjuna's Middle Way. It is full of the authors down here, Mark Sideritz and Shoryu Katsura. Did a really good job, I think, of commentary And the Madhyamika, the portion they took is, I think, in 27 verses, and that would take just 4 or 5 pages in this book. But what they've done is they've analyzed each verse to really give the uninitiated a clear understanding, an approach. The Madhyamika, because Nagarjuna's scholarship greatly relies on the teachings of Buddha, of course, but certainly the teachings around his era, about 100 to 150 AD, the hundreds of years around previous to his life of written texts like the Prajnaparamita, as well as many others that were being translated. But certainly the Mahayana, his contribution was focusing on something that might be easily missed. I'm not saying it was, but I'm saying certainly for us today, as I've been talking to you about the Satipatthana and the perfection of wisdom, this division, this hard stop between Arahat and Bodhisattva, basically is the contested border, if you will, in modern parlance, of Hinayana, or early teachings of Buddhism, and scholarship of Mahayana, leading to deeper and deeper insights of the method of attainment and the conduct of one's life and the effect to one's life in samsara of that attainment, and the responsibility that comes with that, which is something that arguably isn't so much the focus of earlier teachings. And I think I was just rereading this the other day, and there was something that he said, one of these guys said about, I'm going to read that part of the introduction, because I think, I talk about this a lot, but it's nice to hear things in different words sometimes. They might click differently. That a core difference between Hinayana and Mahayana is a depth of understanding of the entire life process that, from a different perspective, and a key different perspective, it really applies to our practice. And then I have a cute little analogy that's been rolling around in my mind about the Peanuts characters. If you guys are familiar with Charles Schulz, I don't know if I'm too old now. I don't know how popular the Peanuts gang is. I think we still see animated shows on Halloween and on Christmas about Charlie Brown and Lucy and the whole crew. But there's an analogy that hit me in the head this morning, and I thought it might be worth sharing with you guys. A little silliness, but it's a helpful visualization tool. So, first of all, introduction to the middle way. The MulaMadhyamakaKarika, or the MMK, by Nagarjuna, circa 150 CE, is the foundational text of the Madhyamaka school of Indian Buddhist philosophy. It consists of verses constituting 27 chapters. In it, Nagarjuna seeks to establish the chief tenet of Madhyamaka, that all things are empty, sunya, or devoid of intrinsic nature, svabhava. The claim that all things are empty first appears in the Buddhist tradition in the early Mahayana sutras, collectively known as the Prajnaparamita. Beginning roughly in the 1st century BCE, earlier Buddhist thought was built around the more specific claim that the person is empty. The self, the I, is empty. We heard a lot of that in the Satipatthana, right? That there is no separately existing, enduring self, and that the person is a conceptual construction. Realization of the emptiness of the person was thought to be crucial to liberation from samsara. Sounds like I could have written this. The earliest Mahayana texts go considerably beyond this claim, asserting that not just the person and other aggregate entities like the chariot, but everything is devoid of intrinsic nature. But what? While they assert that all things are empty, however, they do not defend the assertion. Nagarjuna's task in MMK is to supply its philosophical defense. As is usual in texts of this nature, the arguments are presented in a highly compressed form and so are extremely difficult to comprehend without a commentary. This is what I've been, this desire to hear the perfection of wisdom and Nagarjuna specifically. It's, as many of you who've tried will know, it's a little difficult to penetrate. You almost have to put on your mind of patience, really, to read through enough of it that the central ideas and themes suddenly come out. You can't read Nagarjuna sentence by sentence and expect to understand fully the sentence. You have to read enough sentences to where you go, I get all these fingers are pointing to something. And now I'm starting to gel what it is that's being pointed to. And that's the way to read Nagarjuna. But this is essentially what he's saying. This is due to the nature and purpose of such a text. A karika is a work in verse form that contains a concise formulation of some, often philosophical, doctrine. The karikas are the individual verses making up the work. Texts of this sort were originally used because it's easier to memorize information when it's put into verse form. And as you're singing these verses, the meaning starts to appear. It's really kind of exciting, but we're not accustomed to reading songs like that. Think of the best, most timeless songs in the world. If you read them sentence by sentence in the verses, they sometimes make very abstract references and thoughts, right? Oh, I should probably turn off that mic. I hope that won't mess up this video now. I'm such a dork when it comes to this stuff. Anyway, I don't want to go on and on and on to that, but I think that's probably enough that you get it. Anyway, I can't recommend this book enough. If you're interested in the MulaMadhyamakaKarika or Nagarjuna's central work, I recommend this book because it does such a wonderful job of digging into the meaning of these verses. And it will help you understand the beginning point of Mahayana's bodhisattva practice and understanding of the world around us as we course in the bodhisattva way with our Buddha mind, right? And at this point, before I dig into this dedicated verse, we'll start here. I want to give you my little story of the Peanuts Gang. We've talked a lot about the Buddha mind, the clarity that comes of disassembling our identification, our idea of me, I, mine, self, right? We hear that all the time throughout Buddhism. So I thought, what would that look like? You do Gongyo one morning,
and you're really fused with Gohanzen. You really feel the air, the rarefied air around you. And you really perceive this whole thing that, my little saying that I made up of the bag of Bob, that there is no Sylvain, there is no Betty, there is no... That idea, that conceptualization is born of, constructed of, these attachments, these hanging on to things like they're actual things. It's the thingness, as I often say, that we're addicted to, that we point to as a self, which is really on its face just ridiculous. But I thought, what would it be like to be awakened, to really clearly understand that we're just a moving point of energy, that you and I are just floating consciousnesses in this sea of thingness. And we walked out our front door, and like we look in all those old films of the perfect neighborhood with the little perfect lawns, and what's that little song? Little boxes, right? Full of ticky-tacky. I love that song. With Buddhism, it really sounds funny to me. But anyway. And we see our neighbors come out to get the paper, whatever scene you have in your mind. And instead of seeing them as neighbor in a robe or in the clothes or whatever, we perceive them with this awareness that none of us are those things, that we're just little collections of tendencies and conditions. And they too had just finished Gongyo. What about that world? And we would see each other, and I don't think you could resist the smile that would creep on your face as both of you would understand how amazing this movie is. And that smile would turn totally compassionate. It would almost be, there's a little tragedy in it. Not that enlightenment has a bad side, but enlightenment in samsara is a reckoning with how much non-understanding there is, right? And both of you might look toward the street at a kid, the paper boy, on his bicycle with his little playing card rattling in his spokes so he could have an engine, right? And we would see him unenlightened, completely raptured in his activity of delivering the paper with his sack and his bicycle, and totally addicted, right? Like a cloud that surrounds him. And although we would still smile, our eyebrows might droop, as all we want to do is just, you don't have to have, let's, and I thought of Pigpen, that Peanuts character, that has this cloud of dust and dirt and defilement around him all the time. Even standing still, he's just in this cloud, right? And I thought, wow, what a perfect visualization of a human being completely immersed in their attachments, their misunderstanding of this amazing life, and completely thwarted by all of their attachments, addictions, perception of self. How heavy that is. How all-encompassing. They're having to look through that fog to see this wonderful life, and they can't because they're immersed in this cloud. And doesn't anyone who watched that Peanuts character come across the page or on the screen? Why doesn't somebody bathe him? I want to bathe him. I want to clean him up. I want to see a little cartoon sparkle come off of his eyes, teeth, head, body, whatever. Bing! I just want him to be clean. And I thought, damn if that isn't Buddhism. Even the words, the cleansing, the clear, the clarity, right? Isn't that what we're doing? We're trying to clean Pigpen. We're all Pigpens, walking around in our little cloud of delusions, right? Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Whew. The cloud is dissipating. Anyway, that's all. Wasn't super complicated. When I visualized that, I thought, wow, what if you walked around the world coursing in Bodhisattva, observing everyone in their various fogs, clouds, tsunami, or what is it called? A haboob? The big dust storms? Would that more tactile, visual picture make what we're doing more clear? Anyway, I share these thoughts with you. Maybe I'm a little ridiculous. I see the world very visually. Thus, I'm a painter, an artist. But it just, sometimes these things cross my mind and I think, there's really something to that conceptually that might help. You get tired of reading, you get tired of analyzing, you get tired of working at it. And sometimes little analogies, they're like key fobs. They make it easier to find your keys. Whether on a desk or in a purse or in your pocket, they make it easier to find your keys. And identify them for others who might not know whose keys they just found. Oh, I recognize that fob. That goes with so-and-so. That's how I think of analogies. So, the Karika starts with a dedication verse. And this book shows you the translated verbiage. I don't remember, I'm sure it says in here, whether this is, I think it's Sanskrit, but I could be wrong. I salute the fully enlightened one, the best of orators, who taught the doctrine of dependent origination, according to which there is neither cessation nor origination, neither annihilation nor eternal, neither singularity nor plurality, neither the coming nor the going of any dharma for the purpose of nirvana, characterized by the auspicious cessation of hypostatization. Hypostatization. Tough word. But don't worry, along come our authors with an explanation, an insight. This verse serves not only as a dedication of the work to the Buddha, but also as an announcement of purpose. I get that. One often finds at the beginning of an Indian treatise a statement indicating why one should read it, how one will benefit from its contents. Nagarjuna does not explicitly claim here that this work will help one achieve liberation from samsara. It is Kandrakirti who says this is the purpose of the text. But what he does say suggests that the intention behind his work. The verse begins with the famous 8 negations. Neither cessation nor origination, right? You could just spend a heck of a lot of time and study just on that statement. Our English translation reverses the word order of the Sanskrit original in order to make the meaning more easily intelligible. Conventions of language here, and we find it is Sanskrit. These negations are said to describe the content of the Buddha's central teaching of dependent origination. And then he puts a Sanskrit in here, pratya samutpada. The verse thus claims that when we say everything is subject to dependent origination, right, there's a process, a stacking up. Oh, I had another analogy. What this actually means is that nothing really ceases or arises. Nothing is ever annihilated, nor is there anything eternal. That things are neither really one nor are they many distinct things. And that nothing really ever comes here from elsewhere or goes away from here to elsewhere. Right? We've talked about this. This life is a singular experience you're having of the entire process of life. There's nothing after death, just energy. Some of this would come as no surprise to Nagarjuna's fellow Buddhists. For instance, the claim that nothing ever really moves, discussed in Chapter 2, was widely accepted by Buddhist philosophers as one consequence of the impermanence of existence. The idea that dependently originated entities from a cause series was thought to explain why it appears to us that there is motion. Likewise, neither annihilation nor the eternal echoes the Buddha's claim that dependent origination represents the correct middle path between the extremes of eternalism and annihilationism. This is discussed in chapters 15, 17, 18, 21, 22, and 27, though in ways that go considerably beyond what had been the orthodox understanding. But the claim that there is neither cessation nor origination, discussed in chapters 1, 7, 20, 21, and 25, would have come as a shock to many, since dependent origination was thought to involve and explain the origination and cessation of ultimately real entities. And while neither one nor many will have a familiar ring to many Buddhists, the Buddha did say that the person in one life and the reborn person in another are neither identical nor distinct. The standard Abhidharma account of dependent origination relies on the notion that there are many ultimately real dharmas that are mutually distinct. So when, as in chapters 6, 14, and 27, Nagarjuna claims that what are thought of as two distinct things can ultimately be neither one nor many, this will surprise quite a few. And here are the distinctions again, very hard-stop distinctions between early teachings and the scholarship of Mahayana. The purpose is not to shock, though. Instead, the commentators tell us the point of understanding dependent origination through these 8 negations is to bring about nirvana by bringing an end to hypostatization. There's that word again. Prapanka. The Sanskrit's easier to say. By hypostatization is meant the process of reification or thingifying. Again, this sounds like something I would have said. Taking what is actually just a useful form of speech to refer to some real entity. Thingifying. I'm going to use that. Because the doctrine of dependent origination plays so central a role in Buddhist teachings, Abhidharma scholars developed a complex web of concepts designed to explicate it. The suggestion is that the 8 negations are meant to remind us that the conceptual proliferation can distract us from the real goal, liberation, and perhaps even serve as a barrier to the achievement of the cessation of suffering, of dukkha, of stress, anxiety. See 18.6 as well as chapter 24 and 27. But these negations, as well as other allied negations, are not to be accepted because some wise person has told us so. MMK consists of philosophical arguments meant to refute such things as cessation and origination. And by that he means the idea of something arising and ceasing. That process is a samsaric ideation because of thingifying, but in actuality, there is no such process or no such thing. You see, the thingifying is the problem. There's a process of energy amalgamating and existing and decaying and going away. We know this. But it's the thingifying of identifying it, distinguishing its many components, that is our samsaric disease. Where's an analogy here? Grass grows. We know that it develops from a seed, a rhizome, that if the sun and the temperature and the ground and several things are in balance, in a certain condition, that the grass will appear, it will grow, and at some point, as the conditions change, the tendencies at work that create this grass will diminish, and the grass will die and will go back to dirt. We've thingified that whole process. Is the grass aware of this process? Does the shining green blade of grass with the morning dew on it revel in its process? No, it's simply part of a great process of energy and chemistry and biology. And you see, if the grass were conscious, addicted to its process, how much would it celebrate itself, and how much pain would it feel at the prospect of a cold night or a shifting season and its demise? See, none of that exists for the blade of grass. Not because it's unaware, because it's not thingifying its own process. And if it were aware of the process, it would start to attach itself to identity, distinguishing it from the blade next to it and what is not the blade. This is the samsaric stress, anxiety, suffering. The MMK consists of philosophical arguments meant to refute such things as cessation and origination, because to say something originates or ceases is to imply it exists. This is the central point that I've over and over again tried to talk about in videos about arhatship, or even unenlightened Mahayana practice, that it's about self-enlightenment. Enlightenment is already there. We just have to move the self out of the way. Oh, there's the enlightenment. This whole attachment process to the process is our foible of humanity. It's also our golden opportunity to get around it. Not an easy thing to do. So this work would then be designed to help foster liberation by enlisting the tool of philosophical rationality in the task of putting in their proper place the sorts of conceptual distinctions developed by other Buddhist philosophers. The proper place of these concepts is in the toolkit carried by every skillful Buddhist teacher to be used when appropriate given the circumstances of a particular suffering being. Give Pigpen a bath. Let Pigpen experience without the cloud of dirt. So the next one is, after the introduction, is an analysis of the conditions. Are you hearing the same words repeated over and over again? It's no mystery. This is such a simple idea, really, at its fundament. It's a simple clarity of mind. But it is so difficult to keep that lens, that clear lens of what's going on in life, in front of these human eyes, in front of this human mind. You guys know it. If you've done this more than a week, you know it. Right? It's like the bag of bob I talk about all the time. You know, usually I make a reference to the bag of bob as this idea that there's some existing entity like a soul, a bag, that contains our bobness, my sylvaneness, your whatever. And that after death, that has to go somewhere. But truly, with a reasoning mind, start to take apart what is Bob. How would you answer that question? What is Bob? If you go the physical route, where do you end up? Bob is made of flesh, organs, blah, 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 blood. But that is made of something. Oh, yeah, it's made of these kind of molecules and these kinds of fluids and these kinds of solidity, materiality. Remember the Satipatthana? This is what the early teachings focus on, disassembling this idea of body to the ultimate, what's it made of, identity, being energy. Energy at work, karma. Karma is a function. It's a function, a word describing the instantiation of energy through work. The very idea of tendencies and conditions precipitate from energy doing something, momentum, inertia. Sooner or later, if you go down the physical path, this is where you end up. And so if you deeply understand that intellectually, you know that there's no Bob there. That there's no Bob energy or Bob karma or Bob work. Why am I losing frames? Anyway. And if you go down the mental route, the spiritual route, Bob isn't even a label you gave yourself. Other people gave you that label, and you adopted it as your own. It just doesn't work. There's no way you can prove that a soul exists, because it does not. It's a fabrication. It's a construction. It's a highly thingified cloud of misunderstanding. we keep coming back to that and back to that because it's so hard for our egos to let go of the idea that the ego is a real thing. It's only a real thing in the fooling of our perception. If we could just drop it, our perception would be clear. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. That's what we're doing when we chant. We're clearing that out of there so we can see clearly. And I think I'm going to call it a day. That's a long one. Just a note to ask you how you feel about something. I was thinking of this year's New Year's Gongyo simply being a full Gongyo, because we do this Sunday thing as an abbreviated Gongyo, that we could do a full Gongyo, all 5 meditations and recitations. And then maybe I'd just say a few words on recentering our practice somehow as an inspirational thought for the year ahead. Let me know what you think of that. I was really enjoying this morning's abbreviated Gongyo, and I thought, maybe doing a full Gongyo for New Year's would be appropriate. Let me have your thoughts on that. And thank you so much for being here, for supporting this channel. Like, share, subscribe, all of those things, but also the patrons, those of you who send me a little, whenever you're able. Some send, just $1, some send occasionally really substantial amounts. That's why we had this great sound for chanting and Gongyo this morning. I was able to purchase a better quality mic and cord and stand and all of that so that I could have that in position to do justice to the recitation. Thank you, Reggie. Names, I'm so bad with them. But my girls in the UK, I'm always thinking about you guys. All of you contribute by watching or sending. John, the things that you've sent me, Miriam, and the names will come to me, but we don't have enough video for me to make this mind function that well. You know who you are. I love you dearly. Thank you for supporting this channel and the Sangha. We all thank you. And I will see you all in the next one. I promise. Take care of yourself. Be kind. Bye-bye for now.